So joining us today to help us better understand triggers of stress and anxiety and when we should consider treatment is Dr. Grant Mullen, a former mental health physician and author of the book, Emotionally Free. Welcome, Dr. Mullen, today.
Well, it's nice to be with you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, mental health has become a major issue in our culture. So why did you decide to make that a focus of a passion of yours?
Well, it certainly wasn't my original intention. When I graduated, I actually became an anesthetist. I wanted to put people to sleep. But in the small hospital where I worked, we only did surgery in the morning. So in the afternoon, the anesthetists all became GPs. So I had to do general practice in the afternoon, which was a real stretch for an anesthetist. I mean, I'm not used to talking to people. Right. But in general practice, I was stunned because so many people came to see me, particularly Christians, with mental problems, emotional problems, spiritual problems even. And I had no idea that these problems were so common in the population. And I grew up in the church, so I didn't think there were any emotional problems in the church. I just thought Christians, became saved and everything was fantastic. And so it just caught my attention because all these Christians, they didn't know who to trust, where to turn, what would be an answer that God would be pleased with. And so I just took an interest in it and started to try to help. And then so many people started to get better, to my surprise. It captured my attention, and I decided that this was my life's calling. So I quit anesthesia, I quit general practice, and I had a mental health clinic for about 25 years.
Well, and that's amazing. And I'm so grateful for your work because I think there is a bit of a stigma, especially in the church, and we need to break that because it is a reality that we need to face. And so just from your expertise, why do you think so many people do struggle with mental illness and health problems?
Well, actually, they always have. It's just that now we're actually better at diagnosing it. We're much better at treating it. And so that way we're now looking for it. See, before when the treatments weren't very good, no one even bothered to look. And people certainly were very resistant to treatment. But now that we have such great treatments, great answers, the results are so much better. Now we're actually looking for the people who are struggling and offering them help. And then as more and more people get better, then word gets around. But it's actually always been common, but certainly way more common since the pandemic.
Well, exactly. I mean, the pandemic has really elevated because people are in isolation. And I add to that the seasonal affective disorder that's happening, right, through the tough winter months. So how can people maybe recognize it? And what are some of the things that they can say, hey, maybe I'm actually wrestling with this and I didn't know it?
Well, this seasonal affective disorder, what it means is affective disorder just means mood disorder. So seasonal just means that your mood is worse in certain seasons. Well, in our country, it's worse in the dark months. So there's something about darkness that tends to drop mood. I mean, well, all of us kind of are sluggish, especially during the pandemic where we're locked in and the days are shorter. But in someone who has a low serotonin level, the dark months will aggravate symptoms. So technically, seasonal affective disorder means that during the winter, dark months, your mood gets lower. So you became more depressed, more anxious. But most of the people I saw with seasonal affective, they actually were a bit depressed year round, but it was worse in the dark months. And so I always encourage people to recognize if this is happening. And here's the way to tell if you are suffering from a mood disorder. And this goes for actually all the mood disorders. It doesn't matter what the season is. And the question is, can you shut your mind off from thoughts you don't want? So in depression and anxiety, your mind fills with negative thoughts, anxious thoughts you can't stop. And the other mental health conditions, there are different kinds of unwanted thoughts. But what's important is you lose thought control. And the purpose of medications is to restore thought control. So a seasonal disorder just means that during the winter months, you have more difficulty shutting off negative and anxious thoughts. But the treatments are still the same, whether it's seasonal or not. There are medications that can restore your serotonin level, give you back thought control. But also some people use light treatments. They're called SAD lights. They're special lights for seasonal affective, and you sit in front of that, and they help. Well, they help as well, but medicines actually work better, and you should take them year round.
Well, that is super helpful because I think a lot of people struggle with their thoughts, and especially Christians, they think, oh, well, I just need to pray more. And you're saying, no, actually, there's a physiological element to this that you can actually address And so how do you deal with Christians or followers of Jesus who say, oh, you should just pray about it, or Christians shouldn't struggle with it, it's a spiritual battle? What is your response to that?
Well, actually, this is what propelled me into getting involved in mental health, that very issue, because I saw all these Christians who felt it was just a spiritual issue, and they were so resistant to any kind of medical suggestions. That's actually why I wrote the book and why I started teaching seminars on how to help Christians understand what's really going on between their ears. But we know if you have a low serotonin level, and that tends to be genetic, it tends to run in families, that if you have a low serotonin level, you will lose thought control. And it's actually nothing to do with spiritual issues, other than spiritual issues can make it worse. Like certainly the enemy wants to take advantage of your negative thinking and make it worse. And Jesus, of course, wants to help us get through it. But if your serotonin levels are low, you're going to lose thought control. And that's genetic and it's medical. And so the treatment of that is actually there are medicines to restore your serotonin level and give you back thought control. And then I was just so amazed that when people actually accepted treatment, their spiritual life improved so much because they were able to pray, they were able to use their spiritual authority. God seemed to reappear in their life. And so I realized that there's a medical side to how we're feeling.
Well, and that is so good, because I think we think brokenness is just spiritual, but it affects every part of us, and God designed us to have certain serotonin levels. And so when we can't get there, thank God that we have experts who can help us navigate that as well. And I think also, and tell me what you think about this, I think the added pressure of the stigma makes it actually worse. Like, so you go to church and you're supposed to be happy and have no problems. And so you feel a little, maybe a bit of guilt and shame and added pressure as a result. What do you think about that?
No, without question, I found that because I treated both Christians and non-Christians, I found that Christians suffered more painfully from mood disorders than the non-Christian world, because we add guilt and shame to depression, where the non-Christian world, they're just depressed, but we make it worse because of guilt and shame. And then we over-spiritualize the solution to say, just read the Bible and pray more. And so a person with a low serotonin level, they can't concentrate. So they can't pray, they can't read. And so you're asking them to do something that's impossible for them. So then they feel that God's mad at them and that they've committed the unpardonable sin, and they just spiral down further. But it's a shame and guilt issue, because in Christianity, we're told, take every thought captive, be anxious for nothing. And if you're mature, you should be able to control your thoughts. And so that's why if you can't control your thoughts, you feel so much guilt and shame. And then someone tells you that it's strictly spiritual, don't go and get medical help. And I had so many of my patients forbidden to come and see me by spiritual leaders that they worshiped with.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say next. We're going to come back in after a quick break, but I think that is so helpful. And I just need you to know, if you're watching this, you are not a failure. If you're struggling with these thoughts, that actually you were created for freedom. And the truth is, you're just a work in progress, and God wants to intervene into your life. Well, we're going to be right back to continue this amazing discussion with Dr. Grant Mullen.